means to be willing to change how you live. You might not have power to do it. You might not have power to give up bad habits you know are wrong. In 1974, Billy Graham almost ended his own life. Someone betrayed him so badly it hurt too much. And for the first time, his faith wasn't enough. But that wasn't the only secret he kept. He missed when his first daughter was born and didn't know his 2-year-old at the airport. His son was arrested for drugs while Billy kept preaching. And when recordings came out of what he really said about certain groups, 40% of his fans turned away. This is the Billy Graham story they never wanted you to hear. Billy Graham was born on November 7th, 1918, right in the middle of the Spanish flu that killed over 500,000 Americans. He was born in a small white farmhouse on his family's dairy farm in North Carolina. His father, Frank, was strict and ran the place like a military camp. His mother was deeply religious and read Bible verses at every meal. Billy grew up surrounded by fresh milk, eggs, and vegetables. From a young age, he had chores like collecting eggs from 200 chickens and feeding 2 horses. The farm was their world, and hard work was the language they spoke. One morning in 1924, when Billy was just 6, federal agents broke into the house looking for illegal alcohol. Billy's father had been secretly making and selling whiskey behind the barn. The agents tore through the house with shotguns, flipping furniture and yelling. They arrested Frank and made Billy watch as his mother cried. The fine almost destroyed the family. Frank's name ended up in the local newspaper. That day left a deep scar. Billy would carry the fear of alcohol for the rest of his life. By age 9, Billy had become a wild child. His siblings called him Billy the Kid because of his crazy behavior. He once tied firecrackers to a neighbor's cat during a church event. During Sunday service, he'd fire spitballs at fancy hats using a rubber band. He even hit the preacher's wife once. His parents took him to the doctor, who said he needed more physical work. Nothing really worked. That same year, his grandmother died in his arms. Just before she died, she opened her eyes, smiled, and said she could see Jesus and her husband Ben, who had died years earlier. Ben had lost a leg and an eye in the Civil War. But she said he looked whole and healthy, standing beside Jesus. Billy watched her face light up with peace before she died. That moment made heaven seem real, but also made him terrified of death for years. When the stock market crashed in 1929, Billy was 11 and the family farm was almost destroyed. Twice a day, Billy milked 50 cows by hand. It took hours and left his hands sore. Then he'd deliver milk across town, walking over 10 miles some days. People didn't always pay in cash. Sometimes they'd give chickens or vegetables instead. But through it all, he learned how to push through, no matter how hard things looked. Everything changed in 1934 when Billy, now 15, went to a revival led by preacher Moriah Ham. He went planning to make fun of the event. But one night, the preacher pointed right at him and said he was going to hell. That cut through him like lightning. He tried to hide, but the words stuck. That night, he walked home 2 miles in pouring rain, completely shaken. He didn't tell anyone for 8 months. But his mother noticed. He stopped cursing and started reading the Bible every day. Billy loved baseball. He played first base at Sharon High School and hit a game-winning grand slam in front of 2,000 people. But in class, he was a disaster. His grades were terrible. He played pranks all the time. Once he tricked a substitute teacher into thinking he was deaf. He even hid everyone's textbooks in the bell tower. He had to repeat his senior year. And just like that, his baseball dreams disappeared. Then came Bob Jones University. Billy started in 1936, and it felt more like prison than college. The rules were endless. Chapel at 6 a.m., lights out at 9 p.m., and you couldn't even shake hand with the opposite gender. Billy hated it. The founder told him he'd never make it as a preacher. Billy left after 1 semester. In 1937, Billy worked as a Fuller brush salesman, knocking on doors to sell household brushes. One day, he ran into drunk men who threatened to beat him up. Thinking fast, he acted like he had a gun. It was just a hairbrush, but it worked. He sold more brushes than anyone else that summer. He learned how to talk to people and win over tough crowds. Billy's love story with Ruth Bell began in 1941. Ruth was the daughter of strict missionaries and wasn't allowed to date. But Billy fell hard the moment he saw her. They snuck out for picnics and took long walks, pretending they were prayer partners. Her father found out after reading one of Billy's letters hidden in her Bible. Years later, Ruth admitted she had planned to stay single. But Billy was relentless. He convinced her that God wanted them together. By 1943, Billy had joined Youth for Christ. His first big event was at Soldier Field in Chicago. He expected 2,000 soldiers, but only 40 showed up. In a panic, he ran around the city, pulling soldiers from bars with the promise of coffee and donuts. By the time he preached, the place was full. That night, he found his voice. Fast, passionate, and impossible to ignore. In 1947, Billy took his first tour through Europe. He showed up in London in a bright green suit and flashy shoes. British newspapers called him the Technicolor Preacher. Crowds grew and protests followed. In Paris, he preached standing on a stage made from coffins. His wild movements got attention and criticism, but they worked. The tour raised $250,000 and made him famous around the world. In 1948, after hearing how other preachers were being blackmailed, Billy and his team created a strict code called the Modesto Manifesto. From that day on, he was never alone with any woman who wasn't his wife. His team even checked hotel rooms for hidden people before he entered. In one case, a woman was found hiding in his closet with a camera, planning to blackmail him. She was arrested. Between 1943 and 1948, Billy was pastor of a small church. He earned $48 a week, barely enough to survive. Ruth made bread from scratch, and church members gave him vegetables. When the church refused to give him a $10 raise, he quit. Just months later, his new career as a traveling evangelist exploded. He went from $48 to $500 a week almost overnight. In December 1948, Billy took a stand in Augusta, Georgia. He was scheduled to preach in a segregated venue. But when he saw the ropes separating white and black people, he tore them down with his own hands. The Ku Klux Klan threatened him. The governor warned him, but Billy stood firm. It all started on September 25, 1949, under a circus tent in Los Angeles. Billy was supposed to preach for 3 weeks, but things changed when newspaper owner William Randolph Hearst sent 2 mysterious words to his editors. Puff Graham. Headlines started popping up everywhere. Mobster Mickey Cohen sat in the front row night after night. FBI agents photographed the crowd. Attendance doubled overnight from 6,000 to 12,000 every night. Over 8 weeks, 350,000 people came. But behind the scenes, Billy was falling apart. His friend Charles Templeton had turned skeptic and called him dishonest for believing the Bible. On October 20th, past 2 a.m., Billy wandered into the mountains carrying nothing but a Bible in doubt. He stopped at a tree stump. In the pitch black, he whispered, "I cannot prove certain things, but I accept this book by faith." Something broke free. The very next night, 3,000 people responded to his message. Then came Jane Russell, the Hollywood actress, who walked to the front and gave her life to Christ. Headlines exploded. Right after her came Stuart Hamlin, a hard-drinking cowboy singer. After talking with Billy, Hamlin quit drinking and started talking about Jesus on his radio show. Death threats started rolling in. A burning cross appeared near the tent one night. On December 18th, police found a crude bomb under the pulpit. It didn't explode. Still, the service went on with 300 police officers guarding the tent. On January 25th, 1950, Billy launched the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. He set his salary at $15,000 a year. All money would go to businessmen who couldn't touch it. Within 6 months, 10,000 letters arrived weekly. Donations hit $100,000 a month. 3 years later in London, over 12 weeks in 1953, 2 million people flooded Haringey Arena. The Queen sent her private jet to bring Billy to Buckingham Palace. By 1957, Billy was in New York at Madison Square Garden. At 2:30 a.m. before opening night, he cut down the segregation ropes himself and said, "Christ died for all races." The FBI labeled him a civil rights agitator. In 1960, Billy finally got Wrigley Field. Over 8 nights, 1.1 million people showed up. Billy's paycheck was $1. By 1966, Billy was in Berlin's Olympic Stadium. East German authorities arrested 847 people for listening. Then came Vietnam. In 1966, Billy flew into Saigon and preached to 15,000 troops. The CIA gave him $50,000. In 1995, he admitted, "I counseled boys who died the next day, and I never told them the war was wrong." By 1970, his closeness to presidents became undeniable. That playbook came back in 1968 when Billy bought 1,000 newspaper ads supporting Nixon. In 1969, he wrote Nixon recommending the U.S. bomb North Vietnam's dikes. Nixon estimated 1 million civilians would die. Billy knew it. He supported it anyway. Even after Watergate, Billy didn't budge. Secret recordings caught him saying terrible things. Then he cried for 3 days and vomited. In 1972, more tapes dropped. Graham had told Nixon that Jews had a stranglehold on media. When the recordings came out in 2002, everything shattered. Billy's rise into America's living rooms began in November 1951 when his radio show went on air. Within 3 years, it reached 20 million people weekly. But this came with a cost. He missed the birth of his daughter in 1945. When he returned from Europe in 1949, he didn't recognize his 2-year-old daughter at the airport. Ruth revealed he missed 70% of their children's first 5 years. During his 12-week London crusade in 1954, Ruth sent him a desperate telegram. "Come home." She later admitted she thought of divorce twice. In 1970, his son Franklin, then 18, was arrested for drugs. Graham sent Franklin to rehab while continuing his speaking schedule. In 1972 press conference, he admitted he barely knew his son. It was the clearest sign that his ministry had come at the cost of his connection to his own children. At 75, Graham gathered 10,000 evangelists in 1993. But during his sermon, he collapsed as fluid filled his lungs. He refused medical help and finished his speech. He had missed Ruth's 50th birthday, his children's graduations, countless holidays. Ruth wrote that she had spent decades as a widow in all but name. His final New York crusade in 2000 drew 230,000 people. Graham preached from a wheelchair, his voice trembling. The 2002 release of Nixon-era tapes dealt a heavy blow. He issued 2 public apologies and visited synagogues, even donating $100,000 to the Holocaust Memorial Museum. Still, 40% of supporters distanced themselves. In June 2005, Graham preached his final crusade. 2 years later, Ruth died. Billy spent her final days confessing regrets over decades of missed anniversaries. At her funeral, he broke down and could not finish speaking. On February 21, 2018, Billy Graham died at 99. His funeral drew 4 U.S. presidents. Despite 417 crusades and 3.2 million conversions, Graham's family suffered deeply. He admitted in 1997 that he was a much poorer father and husband. But in 1974, after Nixon's betrayal, Graham fell into despair so deep he considered suicide. Only prayer pulled him back. His life ended with unmatched spiritual influence and profound human frailty woven together.